Hello and welcome to Mentorship Masterminds, the PMI podcast where we deep dive into the world of leadership, innovation, and personal growth. I'm your host Mahesh Deshpande and I'm excited to bring another captivating episode of Mentorship Masterminds. In each episode, I talk to an industry leader, a seasoned mentor on a topic that we think is instrumental in shaping our next generation leaders. The topic for today's session is developing innovative cultures, and to talk to us about this topic, we have with us Tatyana Mamut. Tatyana is a technology transformation leader who has built innovative products and companies and has held leadership positions at Nextdoor, AWS, Pando. She is on a board of directors of a number of high-growth tech startups. She is a keynote speaker who has conducted multiple sessions on developing innovative cultures and developing innovative products. Tatyana, it's an honor to have you on Mentorship Masterminds.
Thank you, Mahesh.
Before we talk about cultures, developing innovative cultures, we would like to know more about your story. How did you get into the leadership role where you are today? You are a CEO of a company, you have held various leadership roles at Salesforce, Amazon. Tell us about your story.
Well, thank you. And with that introduction, now I feel like I have to sound captivating. I'm not sure I can deliver on that. So I am a strange technology leader in Silicon Valley because I have a Ph.D. in Anthropology. And I say it's strange, but it's strange to other people before they realize that actually all the difficult problems in technology innovation are not technology problems. They're actually people problems. So the hard problems in technology today are how do you actually understand the needs of humans, deliver on those needs of humans who are your customers, and then how do you build the team to actually be able to effectively work together to deliver on that promise to other humans. So the hard problems in most technology companies today are actually people problems and not just hardcore bits and bytes and coding problems. With AI, I think there's going to be a lot more human problems that come up as opposed to technology problems as well. And so that's really how to understand what I do and where I'm coming from. And so that particular perspective on innovation and being able to really understand what are the mental models of customers, how do we meet them where they are, how do we delight them, how do we deliver something that they're willing to pay for today, and how do we build the team to be able to effectively work together to deliver on that on time, very important, on time and under budget. So that's, that skill set has taken me very far in Silicon Valley. And I do love engineering and I understand engineering. My mother's an engineer, my father's an engineer, my grandmother's an engineer, my aunt's an engineer, my brother's an engineer. Wow. So I'm the black sheep in the family because I'm a social scientist, not an engineer. But I also know a lot about engineering just because I grew up in that environment. So it's very easy for me to talk to engineers and get along with them. And so that's really the trajectory of my career. It's been going from being really fascinated about human beings in different cultures and understanding how to get to the essence of why are people making the decisions that they are. So I would travel when I was doing my anthropology research, and even when I was right out of college, I was a global advertising leader. And I had to understand, for example, when I was working with Kellogg's, why breakfast was different in Korea than in the United States. And like if you want to launch a breakfast cereal, into Korea, you have to really think about the mental models of breakfast and what people want and what do they desire and what will they actually buy if you're Kellogg's. Because they're not necessarily going to buy the same value proposition as they buy in the United States. So that perspective, going from anthropological kind of framework of getting very quickly to understanding what people in different cultures want right now, and with clarity being able to articulate those needs and those desires, taking that into the technology realm has made me a pretty effective innovation leader.
Do you think that focus on anthropology and social science, is that a key skill that tech companies should also focus on? And has it helped you in all these roles over the years?
Absolutely. That is actually the key reason why I think so many tech projects fail, is because they don't have really good in-depth clarity and leaders with clarity about those human aspects, right? Both the human aspects of what customers want and the human aspects of what kind of team do I need to build. When I put together my product management teams, I have a 1/3, 1/3, 1/3 team construction framework. And so 1/3 of my product managers on my team, I try to make this, roughly 1/3 have a technology background, roughly 1/3 have a business background, and then roughly 1/3 have a really deep, like Ph.D. level, anthropology or sociology background. And the reason why is because, and that last piece of having product managers with deep expertise in the social sciences, and I don't mean that they have like a BA in sociology or they minored in sociology or something like that, I mean like really deep expertise. The reason why is because you often have people in the organization, like if you're a product manager, you're working with engineers. So you have people to help you with the engineering side. If you're a product manager in most organizations, you have a finance team. So you have people to help you with the business side. But who's there to help you with the human side? Who's there to really help you understand what is the right sampling methodology to really understand who our customers are? Which customers should I be talking to? How do I not just listen to the last thing that a customer said? Or how do I sample correctly to be able to synthesize the insights from my customer conversations and discovery calls and discovery meetings? Those things, those are real skills that you are only taught after usually your BA in anthropology or sociology, and you need those people on a product management team. And I think that's really critically important for people to know.
Interesting. So in today's session, we want to talk about cultures, company cultures, and how leaders can shape their company cultures, right? So before we dig deep into that, just for the sake of everyone's understanding, right? How do you define company culture?
Yeah.
Is it just the ping pong tables or the happy hours that companies offer? I know it's more than that, but how do you define company culture?
So we may be talking about Google a little bit more in this conversation, but Google has completely, I think, bastardized and does no good in helping us understand company culture, because they're the ones who have like slides and like free lunch and free ping pong tables and massages at the office. That is not company culture. Those are perks. Those are company perks. That is not culture. Culture are the underlying mechanisms that exist in the organization that actually make certain outcomes possible and make other outcomes impossible. So they are the conditions. In anthropology, we would call it the conditions of possibility. There are many things that humans can do and can accomplish. And culture is the thing that frames what we actually do accomplish and how we do behave. So a lot of times, in order to kind of help explain what this means, is I go back to kind of an analogy of two different countries. So, have you ever been to Singapore or Malaysia? No. Okay, there's a bridge that connects Singapore and Malaysia, and on one side of the bridge, if you're in Singapore, right, one driver driving their car in Singapore, and they follow the rules, right, they drive really well. That same driver in the same car crosses the bridge into Malaysia, and they start driving like a crazy person, right? They start honking, swerving, right? Because what is that? That's culture. Culture is that they know that they're going from one set of conditions of what is possible, right? It is possible to drive like a crazy person in Singapore, but it's socially undesirable. It becomes impossible because the laws and the institutions and the cultural norms make that behavior not possible, right? And then you cross the bridge, and now all of a sudden, driving in a very orderly fashion becomes kind of impossible because everybody around you is like doing something else, right? So it's not culture, like behavior is framed, I would say 20% by what is in a person's head and 80% by the environment that they're in. Does that resonate with you?
Yeah, it does. And I was smiling because I can totally relate to it. Indians, I can even quote myself, like when I'm driving here in US, it's a disciplined way of driving. And when we go back to India, we feel like honking a lot because it's something we grew up with and we miss it. But I get your point. So
but you haven't changed. Here's the thing. You're the same person, right? What's in your head is the same things, but your behavior changes because you're in one environment versus another environment. That's culture. It is impossible. You feel that it is impossible for you, even though you love honking. I know you do, right? You love honking. Okay. Even though you love honking, when you're in the United States, it doesn't feel possible to do that, does it?
Yeah, it doesn't.
Right. That's culture. And so what we need to realize as leaders in organizations is that we are creating those same conditions of possibility for our teams. We are telling them, mostly unconsciously, by the way, what is possible and what is impossible. And whatever you write down in your value statements or, whatever principles that you have for your team doesn't matter at all. All that matters is how you behave as a leader. And here is why. There's a thing called mimetic consciousness in anthropology, which is about mimesis, right? Which is about the fact that we as humans mimic other humans. And this is about, we know this from neuroscience, right? There are mirror neurons in the brain, and those mirror neurons get turned on, especially when we see someone that we admire doing something, we want to mimic them. This happens with our parents, right? Like when we're little children, right? We admire our parents, they're big, they're powerful, right? And so our mirror neurons get turned on, and we do what they do. Whatever, even if that's why the whole don't do as I do, do as I say, not as I do. That's why parents say that a lot, is because they don't realize that they're teaching their kids more through their actions than through their words. And it's exactly the same thing in organizations. Leaders, through their actions, set the culture because they create the conditions of possibility of what is good, what is right, what is the norm. Not through the things that they say, but through the things that they do.
So it's always top down?
It's always top down. And I gotta say, I gotta say, there's a lot of people who are like, well, we can change the culture from bottom up. Bullshit. That's not how culture works. It doesn't work from the bottom up. It does when there's revolution, but there's usually a revolutionary leader who's actually at that point at the top, right? There's never a revolution or a rebellion without a leader. Never. So there's always a leader. The question is, who are the other people mimicking in that particular environment, or in that particular situation? And culture change always has to happen from the top down because of the way, literally, that we are wired in our brains as humans, and because everything in our experience as human beings is to try to fit in based on what the power dynamics and the power structures tell us is the accepted and desirable behavior to get ahead and to fit in.
Yeah. So if I join a company as a leader, suppose I join as a director of PMO, or let's take a step back, even say when I'm interviewing for a company, and we can get to know about the role expectations, the salary expectations, and so on, but is there a way I can assess the culture of the company, if it's a right fit for me to join the company before joining the company? Is there a way we can do that assessment? Is there a framework, strategy?
Absolutely. Always ask about examples.
Okay.
Tell me about the last time that. Okay, those are your best questions to assess the company culture. So, things I like to ask. Tell me about the last time that someone disagreed with the CEO. Okay? Tell me about the last time. And if they're like, oh, I can't remember a time when anybody disagreed with the CEO, red flag. Or, oh, well, they went and they privately talked to people behind closed doors, and then, we eventually got alignment, and then also red flag, right? So you want to, and then tell me about the last time that there was a conflict between two different functions that you're personally close to, right?
Yeah.
And you want to see, right? Is conflict okay? Is it encouraged? Are people afraid to speak up? Nobody will ever say anything bad about their company in the interview. But do you feel that do you feel that they're telling the truth? True, based on what you know about how difficult some of these situations are, right? Does it feel like a credible story? And two, is that the kind of, and then three, is that the kind of environment that you want to be in, right?
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Do people ask these questions in interviews?
Very rarely, because they're trying to get the job.
Yeah.
And honestly, most of the time, I think a lot of people think that they can change the culture on their own somehow, or that somehow things will be different for them.
For their business unit or their organization.
Yeah. And most of the time it's not. I would say 90% of the time, again, you're not going to be the, person who loves to follow the rules in Singapore, who gets to drive who gets to drive and get everybody else to follow the rules in Malaysia, or vice versa. If you're the person, who wants to bring a sense of chaos because you think that Singapore is too structured, you're not going to be that driver. Like, one driver is not going to change the culture of the environment. They're not. And unless you're the CEO, and even then it's really hard.
Yeah.
So, don't fool yourself. Know what you're getting into beforehand. But no, people don't generally ask those questions, right? I have to say, whenever I am interviewing somebody, I know people don't ask those questions, and I do tell them, this job is for you if you are like this, if you are a person who's like this. This job is not for you if you are like a person like this. And I really lay it out to them. I'm like, this is the team that you're getting into. You need to know this. Because if you like to operate a different way, you're not going to change us. So you're going to be unhappy, and we're going to be happy. So that's the situation. I do say that to people when I interview them.
So also knowing what you want to, what are your values also critical, right? When you are trying to look for a fitment.
Oh yeah, when I'm hiring a team, I've built a lot of teams from the ground up. And so for me, it's really critically important, especially when I get to hire people from the ground up, to have people who share, my values, not just my values, but the type of environment, that value the type of environment. Because every team I build, it's a hard driving environment. We work a lot of hours. We have a lot of saucy, off-the-wall conversations. We laugh a lot. We like to go roller skating, and we like to karaoke, and we like to laugh. And if that's not your jam, you're not going to be like being in my team. Because yes, we will be slacking each other in the middle of the night. And if you're the kind of person who doesn't like that and who feels very offended when your teammates are slacking you in the middle of the night and who want to go out and karaoke with you until 11 p.m., you're not going to like being on my team.
Yeah.
So don't join it. You're not going to like it. And it's not going to be great for either one of us.
I also read your article on the 6 F's for prioritization, right? I think it was by Adam
Bosworth gave me that original framework, yeah.
Do you want to talk to our audience about that framework on how to prioritize?
Sure, let me see if I can remember all 6 F's. So it's, fame, fortune, family, friendship, last 2 F's. Oh, I should have prepared for this. Anyway, you can find the article.
Yeah.
But the idea is that everybody wants it all in this particular job. People think that they're going to find one job that's going to give them, money and a great environment, is going to have work-life balance, and it just doesn't work that way. And you have to decide what you value, not what other people value. Right? My friends have much nicer homes and second homes in Truckee, and Teslas and stuff like that. But I don't really care that much. I don't really value those things. So I've never optimized for fortune. I've never optimized for that in my career and my job. But and there's fun. I really optimize for fun and for fulfillment, right? Alignment with what I'm doing. And so when I look at friends who have things that I don't have, I need to own the fact that I have prioritized these 2 things, and they have prioritized 2 different things. So the whole framework is about looking at these things, looking at these 6 F's, and saying, which 2 do I really care about? Because then you have to let the rest of them go. You have to let the rest of them go, and you got to own your choice, because you're not going to have it all.
And when you're looking for working with organizations, you should check that the alignment is with those top 2 or 3 values.
Exactly. And I'm a mom of 2 girls, right? I got 2 kids, I'm very close with them. But like, if I'm honest with myself, family just isn't one of my top priorities.
Okay.
It isn't. My kids are fine. Like, my mom worked, all the time. I turned out fine. My grandmother worked really all the time. She was a top engineer and company manager. And so she wasn't working all the time. Her kids turned out fine. So I just don't prioritize time with my family. That's not important to me. And so you're going to, So I think that's very important for people to know when they work with me, right? Because if they think that I'm somehow, that they assume that I should be prioritizing family as one of my top priorities, and that I have I don't believe in the work-life balance thing either, but that's a whole other thing. But yeah, if they're looking for an environment that is very family friendly, meaning that you clock out at 5 p.m. and then nobody bothers you for the rest of the evening because they understand that you're with your family, that's not my team. And that's not me, right? And so it's very important for people to know that. And not assume that because I'm a mom and have a great relationship with my kids, that's one of my priorities.
This is so powerful. Thank you for sharing. We'll provide a link to that article in the podcast. Great. So on the same lines, when we are as a leader, you said a leader tries to change but probably may not be able to change the company culture. But is there at some point that organizations decide that probably things are not working for us or we are not going where we are supposed to go? Is there like we do Scrum retrospectives, but at an organization level, what's the point where we have these retrospectives? Is there anything like that, and what's discussed?
At the company level, that has to happen at the board level.
Okay.
So, I mean,
like organizations, if I have my PMO, can I change the culture of my organization?
Can you change if you have your PMO? Well, you're also within the larger company.
Of course.
So, I mean, you can tweak it, but you can't completely change it.
Okay.
Yeah. No, you can't completely change it because you're in the context of the metrics that are in, that if your CEO operates in a certain way, your CEO and your CFO expect certain operations to be happening, they expect certain metrics to be prioritized, and they've promised that to their board, you're highly constrained. I do have to say there have been situations, and when I went into Pando, it was a really great situation because I was able to talk very openly to the board and to Todd Olson, the CEO, about how this particular innovation team needed to operate differently for 18 to 24 months. And I laid it out to him and the board in writing, right, how we would need to be structured and organized and why the culture would be slightly different for a certain time scale. And I got board approval, I got Todd's approval. In that case, you can, okay? But I don't think I could do that if I had tried to go into an organization and then with wishful thinking, think that I could do that after I was already part of the organization, right? I mean, the leverage I had was that there was the goal that the board wanted accomplished. Pat and I were aligned on how it could be accomplished, and then he and I put together a proposal that was, that the board also, they didn't have to really sign off on it after he signed off it, but they at least needed to understand why we were not going to be producing the same operating metrics as the other business units and the other divisions of the company. So you can do that when you're going into an organization at a very high level.
By getting the buying of your leadership.
Yes, and by the leadership, I mean the CEO and the board. Okay. Let's just be clear. If you're talking to a director, there's very little that the director level person can do, or even the VP level person can do, except for little tweaks. Yes, they can do little tweaks. They can, change the metrics slightly, or they can have your delivery cadence, they can move your sprints from 2 weeks to 3 weeks. Or, they could do little things, but that's not going to fundamentally change the culture. Those changes, again, they happen from the top down because the constraints at the top level are really big. And I think that people who are in lower management levels don't fully understand the pressure that middle management is under to deliver on the operating metrics that they need to deliver on.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Tatyana, you've built so many teams, right? Product teams in so many different companies with different cultures. What have been some of the challenges that you see in building new teams from grounds up?
I mean, the challenge, so the main thing, I just got to say, I love it. So like, for me, the challenges are always worth it. I love building new things and building new teams.
So let me rephrase the question. Like, what are the challenges and how do you tackle those?
Yeah, so let me just say,
how do you turn those challenges into opportunities? Or
so one of the things I think that why people get very confused about innovation and why it's always, I think, not always, but often much more painful for innovation leaders than it needs to be, is that innovation leaders need to be very clear about the constraints that the organization requires them to be under, okay? And the number one constraint is timing, okay? Deadlines. I love deadlines. I am all about deadline-driven everything. Like, all this shit, like, you can only, like, this agile bullshit where, like, you can have, you know, the feature set or the date, but you can't have both. It's like, okay, well, you can have, you know, your paycheck or the date, but you can't have both know how much money is going to go in your paycheck or when it's going to be. How about that? That's not how the world fucking works. Like, the world works where you need to commit to something and you need to do your best to make it happen by a date. Like, that, I mean, again, like when you're at a startup, you feel it more tangibly, right? Because what you do immediately results in money from customers, and that money is the thing that pays your paycheck.
Yep.
More people in organizations need to have that mentality. Like, the thing that I do and when I deliver it is the thing that determines whether I get paid, on what date and how much. Okay, more people need that. So deadlines. This is why I'm talking about deadlines.
I love deadlines too. When I joined, sorry to cut
Yeah.
you, but when I started into project management, the thing that excited me most was deadlines.
Yes.
Like, a project by definition is something which has a definite
Deadline.
scope and it has
Correct.
to be done by a deadline.
It has to be done by a deadline.
It's not like your accounting or operations where it goes on forever. You have to get these things
Correct.
and you have to drive towards a deadline.
That's exactly right. There has to be a delivery date. So anyway, so I think that a lot of people, a lot of product leaders, and a lot of them that come from this like agile engineering kind of thing, have been brainwashed to believe that they don't need deadlines or they don't need to deliver like a known piece of work by a deadline. And that's just like, that's not reality, right? Like, again, that's not reality. So what I do is I very clearly on every single document I have a date. And when I advise CEOs and CPOs, this is the number one thing that I do when I review their documents is I'm like, what's the date? Like, when do you think you're going to deliver this? They're like, well, this is a product vision, so it's really far. I'm like, great. Is it a product vision for 12 months, 18 months, or 36 months? Like, give me a date. This is something I learned at Amazon, too. I didn't learn it, actually. I learned it at my whole life, but IDEO also, everything had a date. But at Amazon, the wonderful thing about Amazon's PRFAQ process is the most important thing, as I tell everybody when they're writing a PRFAQ, the most important thing is to put the date at the top. Because the date is what determines what you can actually deliver to the customer. Because if the date is, again, 3 years from now, you're going to deliver a lot more if the date is 6 months from now and that constraint. So you have to get really clear on what the constraint is and when you need to deliver. I love customer-driven dates. What I do when I go into an organization is I work with the marketing team and I'm like, when are our conferences? And so if it's a company that has conferences, it's amazing. Because then I'm like, great. The conferences in, like when I went into Pando, we have a conference in May. We have a conference in October, and then we have our sales kickoff, our company kickoff in February. Those are the three deadlines. Those are the 3 dates. We're going to build, you know, a V1 product, like a demo product for this. We're going to build a beta product for that, and we're going to GA on that date. And so I love deadline. And I love the customer-facing deadline, or if I don't have one, then I'll produce one. So I'll like spin up something with the marketing team, like a webinar where we're going to demo something, or again, just work with the marketing team, and it's a non-arbitrary date. It's like we have 100 customers signed up for this webinar, and we've promised them a demo of this feature.
So you have to make it happen.
Gotta make it happen.
Yeah.
There are no excuses. And if there are, and in development, there are always things that come up, right? It's not like I don't work with developers, but then what I do is I say, you have to tell me as soon as you're encountering a problem that something is at risk, because then we need to get in a room and talk about what do we do, because this date isn't going away. The date isn't going away. So you have to tell me as soon as you figure it out, or as soon as you see a problem, you have to call me in, and we're going to talk about, okay, if we can't deliver it, that's cool. I get it. You're human. Stuff happens. Let's figure out what you can deliver by this date.
Customer-driven deadlines. You basically raise the stakes so that everyone ensures they work together, collaborate together to make it happen.
And you don't get this. Well, that's an arbitrary deadline. And then if you have an arbitrary deadline where, say, one team puts a deadline in place, then the other team that can't make the deadline doesn't like that team. Then they start then you have cross-functional arguments, and engineers who think these are arbitrary deadlines. Just these are not arbitrary deadlines. These customer-driven deadlines. We promised this to the customer on this date. Let's make let's make something happen that you're proud of. And the other thing is, it's very motivating for engineers. Customers are going to see your feature, your product on this date.
So they are able to connect the dots and see their place in this whole large story.
Right.
And they are motivated to work towards it.
Exactly.
Wow, this is so powerful. I'm learning so much. In organizations, when we join new companies, right? And there is few things that can be changed, few things cannot be changed. But if you are unaware of few things, right, of not just from a culture but also from domain perspective, I have seen a lot of managers go with this imposter syndrome of fake it till you make it.
Yeah.
So what's your take on this? How do you approach a situation in a scenario where you are new to a company and you're trying to adapt and thrive? Is it okay to go with fake it till you make it, or how do you approach? What's your guidance on this?
Never fake it till you make it, because as soon as somebody is on to the fact that you're faking something or trying to be an expert in something that you're not an expert in, you've lost all credibility. Okay? So there's ostensibly
no coming back from that.
Not
very
really.
difficult.
It's very difficult. It's very difficult. So ostensibly, there's some reason that we were hired, right? So figure that out. Why was I hired to do this? What am I good at, right? And lean on that, because obviously that's very valued. And then, this is the basic first 90 days kind of thing. For the first 2 weeks, just talk to everybody who's an expert in the organization. Really listen to them. Write down what they said in public ways, and admit when you don't know something, right? So two things that I in terms of the culture on my teams, the other piece of the culture that on my team that I didn't tell you about is open debate. Okay, open debate. So and open challenging to me, right? When I'm the most senior person in the room, I want to see who will challenge me publicly, and I will reward them for it. And that is also about I'll say something based on what I understand. And then one of my PMs or one of my engineers or designers or somebody will be like, no, Tatyana, you're confused. It doesn't work that way at all. And then how I respond either increases my credibility or decreases my credibility, right? So I try to respond. People who have worked with me will tell you whether this is true or not. I try to respond by listening to them and saying, either I disagree with you or we're seeing it two different ways, or I'll argue back, or I'll be like, oh, you know what? You're absolutely right. I was totally wrong about this. I misunderstood this. Thank you because I think most people don't expect their leaders to be experts at everything, right? No individual, one human can be an expert at everything in the organization. Besides, that's why we have lots of other people working at the company, right? Because they're the experts.
So be authentic, although you might be vulnerable at times.
So the thing is that it's not I believe that it makes me look stronger to admit when I'm wrong than to try to cover up that I'm wrong. Mm-hmm. Because strong people don't try to look strong, right?
True. That's
Weak people try to look strong.
Yeah.
Strong people don't give a shit because they know that they're strong. Right? It's like the like Japanese martial arts, right? The real like samurai master never needs to display their strength because everybody knows, you know. So that's what I think. I think that the more you can lift other people up and show how other people are strong, and that you're perfectly willing to admit that you're wrong, you're perfectly willing to be challenged and reward people for challenging you publicly. Like, I never want to be in a situation where any manager who reports to me tells their people, you know, oh, you know, don't say that publicly because, you know, we need to first, you know, do some internal meetings before we tell Tatyana this. Like, I never want to be in that situation. Anybody should be able to say anything to me publicly and to my face.
Do all leaders are like you?
Leaders are all different. Yeah. Okay.
But I think your point is this is a quality that a leader should try to emulate. Or
you know, I think everybody needs to make their own decision on that. But if they're trying to look strong and they're trying to deal with imposter syndrome, the question is, I think, what kind of team would you want to be on? Not what do you think will make you look like a competent leader right now. So remember, the number one thing about being a leader is that you have followers, not that you have a title.
Yeah.
I think one of the things that's really completely wrong in our framework around how to become a leader is to take roles with more and more direct reports. That doesn't matter at all. Again, my value system says that doesn't matter at all. Almost every company, not every, but a lot of companies I've joined as an IC with 0 direct reports. And then people want to follow me. So then I get 4 direct reports, and then I get 6, and then I get 20, and then sometimes I get 50, right? But again, that's to me what leadership is. Leadership is not, do you come in with a title and an organization under you? It's how much can you inspire other people to want to join your project, join your goal, and how much do you want people, or do you actually attract people to working for you? That's leadership.
This is so powerful, and I'm enjoying this conversation so much. I want to piggyback on something that you said in the last answer about support and about growing, right? And I want to talk about mentorship. Mm-hmm. This might be a rhetoric question, but did you have mentors support you in your journey?
Yes, and they have always been bosses of mine or former bosses. Okay. So the mentors, you know, they're still, like my very first boss out of college was, I mean, exceptionally fantastic. T. Scott Edwards was at an ad agency, and he was the VP of new business, and I was like, you know, his underling, but he was my boss. And I was doing a lot of research stuff for him, and I went into a lot of meetings with a lot of the top executives in the global ad agency. I mean, this is like a very, very large global ad agency, like $6 billion or something in billings. And, you know, at first I would sit and I would listen in on, I'd listen to the meetings, and then I would come out of the meeting and I said, hey, Scott, I actually think that this was wrong, and I think da-da-da. And he turned to me, and the first time I said this to me, he said, if you keep your mouth shut in another meeting, you're fired. So you better like open your mouth in the next meeting or you have an idea like that. And he walked away.
So he wanted you to be vocal, and even if you're speaking against him, he wanted you to do it right then and there.
Exactly. So that was my first piece of mentoring from him. So if I didn't open my mouth in the next meeting, I was fired.
That brings me to my follow-up question. How do you find such people, right? Because I speak to a lot of leaders, and what I've understood is many of leaders who have moved up in their career ladder, they not only had mentors, they also had sponsors who got them into when there was an opportunity where they found a right fit. They ensured that these people supported them to grow, to mentor, to learn, and move into leadership roles. But the question that comes up is, how do I find these people?
You find them by bringing people great ideas. So the reason why Scott became my sponsor, not just my mentor and boss, but my sponsor for the rest of my career, is because I would stay up late at night thinking about the problems of the company and writing him like memos and saying, hey, I actually think we should be thinking about it this way, and I think we should be doing that. And then the next boss he introduced me to was Brenda Williams. So he passed me, like when my stint in his organization was over, he actually went out, because he was such an incredible person and such a strong sponsor, he went out and he found my next boss for me in the company. And he said, you should work for Brenda. And Brenda was starting a new consulting firm within this global ad agency. And the reason why he matched us up is because he knew that I would bring her the same quality of ideas that I brought to him. And so people don't sponsor you just because they think you're a good person or because they've got a good, whatever. They're a good human. We're all, hopefully we're all good humans. But you need to bring them something that they value and that they see that value as something they want spreading in their organization and all over the world.
Yeah.
That's how you build those sponsors. Because guess what? Everybody's really busy.
Yep.
And everybody would like to help every single person who is a great person, but you just can't. But if somebody is actually doing amazing work and coming up with brilliant ideas, and somebody in a position of power is like, wow, you have to inspire people, the people that you want to sponsor you. You have to inspire them.
Such an amazing perspective. Thank you for sharing.
But then again, I stay up late at night writing stuff all the time. So it's also easy for me. My brain doesn't turn off. And I'm a night owl. So if I see something that can be improved somewhere, I will literally stay up writing all night long. And I mean, it's gotten me by the way, that's a great strategy for people.
Okay.
Write memos that are very insightful and then circulate them to very powerful people. I mean, if you have, all of us have ideas and all of us have, things about how the organization should operate or whatever. If you really feel strongly about your idea and your concept, stay up late, send it to your boss, ask if you can send it to your VP, and then maybe the VP will want to send it to the CEO,
That also helps you get visibility.
Yeah, but I mean, it's not about you getting visibility. It's about you producing idea that can really help the organization. That's the thing. People are self-centeredness doesn't work. I mean, sometimes it works. For some jerks, it works. But you know what? Those jerks, they generally have very short careers. They might make $10 million in that very short career. But okay, fine. But then you don't have a lot of people who admire you or who are friends. Again, this is back to the 6 Fs. If you just care about the money and you won't care about buying a nice house and retiring when you're 40, cool. Be a jerk, play the game, do whatever you need to do. But if that's not your value system, then, just realize that people are outed as jerks in their careers. And then you burn your relationships and you don't, when you're trying to start something new, you don't have people who want to come and join your organization. So, I don't know, just play the game based on your value system and not somebody else's value system. There's nobody like you. There's nobody like you in the world. There's nobody as special as you. And there's nobody who shares your values or your talents. So as much as you can shine with your talents and still live by your values, not somebody else's values, there is no ladder to climb. We're all making our ladders as we go along. That's the thing that's going to bring happiness. And so many rich people are so tragically unhappy. These people who you see who are CEOs and, CTOs, many of them are tragically unhappy because they did all the right things, they checked all the right boxes, they got really lucky as they were checking them, and then they were like, I can't, this is my life, this is not what I wanted. Or somehow I'm unhappy. And I don't want anybody to feel that way.
Yeah.
So
I lost my thought. This is so powerful. I'm processing so much information here. I want to switch gears.
Okay.
And this has been really insightful, talking about cultures, right? And how to grow as a leader.
Mm-hmm.
I want to switch gear and talk.
Oh, can I say one more thing?
Sure.
The most important person that you need to lead is yourself.
Okay.
Okay. And by this, I mean, you need to realize that the only person at the end of the day who cares about your status is you. And you get to define what that status means. And you get to define your trajectory in the world. Not some organization's, whatever bullshit career ladder, not somebody else's, because the career ladder is just one way of defining, what boxes are available in an organization. But we are all on individual paths, no matter what those boxes in an organization say. And so you are leading your own trajectory through life. And the most important question about leadership is, how do I want to lead myself through these precious 80 years that I have in this lifetime? And we can get into other lifetimes at another podcast, but there are other lifetimes, and there's a longer story to the whole trajectory. But right now, I am leading myself through these 80 years. And what is the path that I'm leading myself through? And who are the people that I want to meet along the way? And what are the experiences I want to have along the way? And what are the things that bring me joy? And that's the most important question about leadership, not what organizations are telling us what to do.
It's like, if I give an analogy of a sports person, it's like they say that don't follow and become somebody else. Try to become someone who inspires and others would like to become you. So you're saying try to create a path for yourself based on the values that you believe that are important for you, rather than focusing on how others have gone through it. Listen, learn, but create your own path.
Exactly. And lead yourself, right? Nobody defines if you're a leader. If you feel that you are leading your own trajectory through life, you will feel like a leader. It doesn't matter what your title is.
This is so powerful, Tatyana.
We're so obsessed, the titles thing, I have another post on LinkedIn, I don't know if you saw it, but think about stories, not titles. Oh my gosh, titles. People obsess about titles. And it's really tragic, because when you fall for thinking about your value or somebody else's value based on the title that they have, you are allowing some other institution and organizational structure to define how much you value yourself or another person. Don't do that. No matter what your title is, you have the same exact value. You as a human have a unique value, regardless of what title you currently have. And titles change very quickly.
Don't box or limit yourself to the title.
Yeah, and don't even define yourself. Just say, what are the stories that what are the experiences that I'm having? What are the relationships that I'm building? What are the stories that I'm going to get to tell my grandchildren? That's really all that matters. Are your grandkids going to give a crap whether you had a CTO or a, whatever lead engineer title? No, your kids don't. What they care about is what did you accomplish? What did you do? Whose lives did you touch? What kind of amazing products did you build? What kind of inventions did you create? What did you bring into the world?
What was your contribution?
What was your contribution? Right? That's it. That's what people should be focused. That's what I focus on. I'm not going to tell I'm not going to tell people what they should do. But I am here to be the counterforce in many ways to people getting so obsessed with titles and organizational boxes, because honestly, it's all just a fiction, and people can reorg and move those boxes around anytime, by the way. It's totally arbitrary.
Yeah.
So if you're basing your identity in any way on those boxes, you're not going to be a very happy person, I think.
This is amazing. I want to switch gears.
Okay.
And I have just one last question for you. And this is this is on a different tangent, right? I want to talk about artificial intelligence.
Great.
AI is changing the landscape for everyone.
Yes.
Across companies, across roles. As a leader, what are the things that you need to do to adapt to this tsunami of transformation? How do you adapt? How do you change? And if we can focus on the field of project management, because I know you can talk about this topic for hours, but if you look at project management and the PMO or a project management leader or a program management leader, what are the skill sets that they need to build? What are things that they need to learn, unlearn, relearn to adapt to this changing scenario?
Mm-hmm. So I'm now like founder and CEO of a new AI agent startup. And one of the things that I am seeing is that AI agents will start taking on more and more tasks. So if we think about is AI going to take our jobs? I think that the answer is that AI is going to decrease the need for the current jobs that we have because AI is going to take over a lot of tasks, okay? So the way that you define your job in terms of the tasks is the most critical thing to look at. And so, our AI agent, our Wayfound agent right now, it's a great lead gen agent that can interact and converse with prospective customers and potential customers in a really natural, fluid, almost consultative expert kind of way, where like normal chatbots now are just like, give me your name, give me your email, give me your, tell me about your company so that I can like send you in more marketing stuff, right? Ours is much more consultative. And so what you see is that there's certain aspects of interacting with humans that are still going to be taken over by AI agents. In the project management perspective, all the tracking and all of that kind of work, right, is probably, I would think, going to be done by AI, right? Because that's just easier to do, easier to track. Once we have plugins in terms of, when something is feature complete, like you don't need humans talking to humans, you can have AI agent systems talking to each other. You can also have AI agent systems, taking, for example, a lot of the customer-facing interactions from like a Wayfound agent and then reviewing roadmaps to make sure that they are aligned, right? So that's one of the tasks of teams like product operations, right? Product operations often pass along the things that the marketing and the sales teams and the customer success teams are hearing to give back to the product management team in order to review the roadmap. Now AI can do a lot of that translation, very quickly and easily. What I think then you have to think about is where am I adding real value as a human project manager? Am I inspiring people? Am I bringing people together? Am I communicating well in a way that is not just about capturing people's minds or telling them the rationale, but also helping them feel part of the team, helping them feel aligned, helping them feel really valued in terms of their contribution. And so a lot of those pieces of communication, I think will still, where you need trust to get things done, that's where humans, and especially project managers who are really good at building trust between humans, are going to potentially excel. So,
do I need to start studying anthropology?
I think everybody should study anthropology because I think a lot of people are really living in very, very narrow slices of reality because they actually don't understand what's possible in the human condition because we've all just been like grown up in our little culture, in our little point in time in the universe, and we think that this is all there is. If you study anthropology, you understand that there have been many massive transformations of society and culture and cultural destruction, and humans have figured out a way. So you feel a lot less fear about what's coming. You get to imagine possibilities in a better way. I mean, anthropology honestly prepares us for unknown futures better than anything else. Because if you look, like archaeology is about, historical anthropology, so really looking at, again, the destruction of civilizations and, how people suffered a ton and their whole civilization collapsed and then it was rebuilt. But people are okay. We still survived as humanity. And people had to learn and transform and learn new jobs. And, sometimes there's ecological destruction that's happened in human history. And guess what? Climate change, yeah, it's really scary, but guess what? Humans have seen this before. Like,
This is not the
climate
first
shifts,
climate
not the
change.
first time, not the first time. End of the ice age, potentially much worse
Yep.
than this. So, it takes away a lot of fear. It helps you expand your capabilities. It helps you move forward as a person who is leading yourself through the world, as opposed to waiting for somebody else, like a politician, to tell you what's happened. And also, even currently, anthropology helps you understand what is in the minds potentially of other people. And when you can't imagine how other people currently in other countries or other places could be so different than you, or could frame things in such a different way than you, and you're trying to just like put your value system, on a particular group of people, it opens your mind to help understand, right, what might actually be going on at a deeper level. And through that synthesis of seeing, or through the analysis of being able to see different things, you get to a new synthesis, right, of like helping to move the world forward. So, yes, anthropology is really, I think, one of the most empowering disciplines for people to study, if not the most empowering discipline, because it gives us that long arc and that both the depth and the breadth of what does it mean to be human, what does it mean to go through massive transformations, big technological shifts. Again, remember, this is not the first big technological shift that humanity has seen. And where do you study that, right? Anthropology. It also helps you lean in to the things that are happening in the world. So, I'll just say that whatever people are doing to help them grow their career right now, there are massive shifts that nobody expected, that you can learn history, you can learn anthropology, but you can see that the things that people expected their lives to be and what actually happened have often been very different, and we need to prepare ourselves. So, for anybody who's like, thinking about getting a mentor or a sponsor or taking a new course to advance their career, I just want to say that like whatever happens in Ukraine is going to affect your personal income and your personal life way more than anything that you do in your job. Your next promotion does not matter if we have a bad outcome in Ukraine. It doesn't matter. Because just ask the people in Venezuela or in Russia, right, who are doing great in their careers. Mm-hmm. And then the political situation completely changed their lives. So that's the other perspective that I think people need to take. If they're gonna claim that they're real leaders, they need to take a much broader perspective on the world and what's happening.
This is awesome. Tatyana, one last question. If you have one piece of advice for aspiring leaders who are trying to move into a new role, what would that be?
I've said a lot, so I'm going to say something completely different, which is your life is not just your job, and don't take it so seriously, right? We need to have a sense of perspective. We need to have a lot of empathy for the people that we work with and that we work for, and we have to be less egocentric. Right? And so you just be happy, be joyful in everything that you do. If you ever find yourself waking up in the morning and dreading your job, and if this happens for several days in a row, stop, don't do it. Whatever game you're playing is obviously not the game that's making you joyful and happy. So play a different game. There are tons of other games to be played. You can make up other games to be played. Don't do executive presence bullshit. All this stuff about executive, how do I build executive presence? And people are like, let me tell you how to build executive presence. Do this with your hands. All this stuff, just be yourself and be your true and authentic self. And that's what's going to make you happy, pursue a joyful life, help other people around you be joyful. Create and invent as much as you can, because honestly, that's what the world pays you for. If you're in product or project management, anything, all of those roles, the world wants you to create things, and you will create better things if you are a joyful human being and you work with joyful human beings. I think that's my biggest piece of advice.
Let's end it right there. Tatyana, it's been a pleasure and an inspirational conversation. Thank you for being on Mentorship Masterminds.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for tuning into today's episode of Mentorship Masterminds. This was a powerful session with Tatyana. We discussed about culture, innovation, and also about artificial intelligence. Do check out other episodes of Mentorship Masterminds on YouTube and Spotify, and keep tuning and listening in to Mentorship Masterminds. With me, your podcast host, Mahesh Deshpande. Until next time, keep thriving, keep inspiring.